So it was February 2020. In a restaurant somewhere, I sat down, reflecting on what my next move should be. I felt a bit undecided, hesitant to make any rash decisions. As I scrolled through my social media feed, I decided to post on my profile and ask advice from my friends. I read some very encouraging comments. From what they mentioned, it looks like I have to take the risk and finally get out of my comfort zone. Later that week, I found myself creating an elaborate plan. I made sure to be very detailed and list down all the things that I want to do and need to do. Money? Check. Itinerary? Check. Transportation? Check. Vaccinations? Check. It was going to be my very first backpacking trip. The exciting and risky thing about it is that the COVID-19 pandemic has just begun. Backpacking, as we know it, started in the 1950s and 1960s when young Europeans longing for spirituality and freedom began traveling to Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Thailand. Even then, backpacking is all about packing light and keeping costs as low as possible. But what is backpacking in the first place? Backpackers are travelers who carry all their things in a backpack. They're driven by a sense of adventure and are always finding off the beaten paths. They travel as cheaply as they can to maximize their time on the road, and they accept very affordable accommodation, such as hostels. Usually, backpacking is undertaken by people who are undergoing gap years, career breaks, or even retirement. In fact, in my travels, I met a lot of old travelers, which is I find very interesting. According to a study by Hostel World, backpackers are beginning to adopt slow travel. They are choosing to explore fewer countries in a single trip to get more out of each destination. From an average of 3 to 4 countries in the past, backpackers are now just going to 1 to 2 countries per trip. Personally, I agree very much with this approach. When I was initially planning my backpacking trip, I wanted to visit many Southeast Asian countries. Eventually, I decided to go to Vietnam because of how convenient and easy the transportation system is. Vietnam is also one long strip of land, which makes it a little easier to go around. What I observed in my travels is that backpackers are mostly Westerners, from Americans, British, and Canadians, down to Australians and Germans. I was surrounded by very interesting people from all these developed countries. One time, I was talking with a European about why they travel. That's when I realized travel is part of their culture and psyche. In fact, some of those I chatted with have been traveling for half a year. When I went on the backpacking trip in Vietnam last February 2020, a number of people I met were quite surprised that a Filipino like me was backpacking. I took it as a compliment and was rather proud of myself for going on a solo backpacking trip. In Filipino and Asian culture, you won't usually hear about backpacking. In the West, it seems quite common for youngsters to undertake gap years after school or college. To be completely honest, I was both curious and jealous, which is why I decided to go on a backpacking trip of my own. I learned quite a number of things from my travels that I normally wouldn't have learned when I remained in my comfort zone at home. Today, I outlined some of the reasons why I think everyone should go on a backpacking trip at least once. I hope these reasons would encourage you to go out, explore, and move beyond your comfort zones towards a world different from yours. Reason number one, autonomy. There are only a few opportunities in life where we experience full autonomy. And I would argue that one of those is backpacking. When you go backpacking, you have complete control over what you want to do and where you want to do it. For instance, you can decide how your itinerary will look like. From point A to point B, you have the free reign to decide how it's going to be. But of course, if you're traveling with someone else, it's going to be a bit different. The most important thing is that through backpacking, you're able to develop your autonomy and temporarily free yourself from the monotony of life. Reason number two, new experiences. From new food, new people, and new places, backpacking is a complete package. Don't forget, the worthy backpacking experience is one where you keep your things light and your costs low. I remember my first day in Vietnam. I was eating chicken pho on the sidewalk. A few minutes later, a Vietnamese sat in front of me to eat as well. I chatted with him a bit and got a few travel tips. He was my first ever Vietnamese friend, even though it was just for a brief moment. Experiences like these are what drive me to go backpacking and meeting different kinds of people. Reason number three, cultural sensitivity. Backpacking teaches you a lot about other cultures. From someone like me who has lived in the Philippines for quite a long time, most of what I know involves my local culture and local experiences. By being exposed to other cultures, I began becoming more sensitive and understanding of my differences with others. I think hostels would be the prime example of places where you get to meet a hot pot of different cultures. Hostels also have a communal environment, which helps you interact with others more easily. Another thing you will commonly find in hostels are the communal spaces or living rooms, where you can socialize with different kinds of people coming from different walks of life. Reason number four, flexibility. The moment I land in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, I realized that I'm going to have to throw away most of what I planned out. At that moment, I realized I have to be flexible and take in spontaneously what the country has to offer. From there, I started booking experiences that seemed interesting to me, as well as started meeting new people in the cities I visited. One very fond memory I had was when I joined a Vietnamese coffee making class in Hoi An, a humble French style town that's apparently a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I became friends with my instructor, and we even interact on social media up to this day. Reason number five, the random acts of kindness that you encounter along the road. I've had several experiences in my travels where I encountered kind and genuine people. In one of the hostels I stayed in, someone whom I barely knew gave me her remaining cough lozenges when she noticed that I had a sore throat. In another hostel, I came across an old fellow who was well versed in economics and world history. We talked for a few hours and became momentary friends during my stay in that particular city. Finally, when I came to Hue, the former capital of Vietnam, a restaurant owner gave me two pieces of banana for free when she recognized that I was traveling alone. She said that I reminded her of her own son. I think her son was also traveling at that time. To me, These random acts of kindness are what also made staying in Vietnam very worthwhile. I hope to experience more of these in the future. At this point, I think it's best to point out some disclaimers. The most obvious is that there's no sign of stopping yet for the COVID 19 pandemic. So it's important to always stay safe. Another is that travel restrictions are common around the world. So you have to be careful in choosing which countries to go to. If it were up to me, however, I would suggest that you stay at home. There are plenty of ways we can travel virtually, such as through photos and videos. Nonetheless, these are the reasons why I think everyone should go backpacking at least once in their life. Not only does it expand your worldview, it also helps you appreciate the small and tiny details of life and to embrace them as your own. To me, backpacking also helped me become more assertive and decisive as a person. When you go backpacking, you have to take care of yourself well and make every decision count. It's also important to stay aware of your surroundings, particularly scammers or anyone who clearly doesn't wish you well. As a backpacker, you have to be attentive and vigilant. Most importantly, you just need to have fun. My backpacking trip lasted for 3 weeks because I had to go home when the lockdown was imposed in Manila. Fast forward today, Manila is still in some form of lockdown. If I did not decide to go backpacking that day in February 2020, I think I would have regretted that decision. I'm glad, however, that I pursued it because now I have some good memories to cherish and share with others.